Welcome to this episode of Science of Peace. I'm very excited to be doing these podcasts again, the Science of Peace podcast. If you didn't know, I have 4 podcasts right now on iTunes. I'm Yogi Chris, PhD, and I have 4 podcasts. One is called Science of Spiritual Growth. That takes place on Thursdays. It's the same Zoom link that you would use for this show. Otherwise, you might be catching it on my Instagram or my Facebook. You can always follow me on those places and catch it. You can obviously, if you catch this on iTunes or YouTube, leave a comment, like let me know that you're watching it or leave a review. Silent Flute, no story, Silent Flute, daily meditation and breathwork. Yes. Silent Flute is my online training program. So if you like this podcast, you want to train with me, go to ninthlimb.com and that's where you'll find that stuff. So I have Science of Spiritual Growth on Thursdays. All my podcasts have the same Zoom link. It's Thursdays at 5 Pacific. Behavior Code is Tuesdays at 5 Pacific. Enlightened Masculinity is Wednesdays at 5 p.m. Pacific. And then this podcast, the 4th one, which is Sundays at 9 a.m. Pacific. I'm doing it all in Pacific time. It's the same Zoom link. So this is Science of Peace. My shows, they generally go, Behavior Code is all about male-female dynamics. Enlightened Masculinity is kind of like a red pill kind of idea, but with spirituality. So it's like, it's related to male-female dynamics, but it's more of like how to just be a man. Obviously, that is in relation to women. I mean, what is a man without a woman? And what is a woman without a man? I mean, they define each other by opposites. Then Science of Spiritual Growth on Thursdays is mostly about communication. Spiritual growth being the communication is how we can evolve our minds, that anything we do with our body chemistry, with our physicality, anything we're trying to do in our relationship. First of all, anything we change in our physical, it's superficial, it's physical. I mean, there's so many beautiful people in the world that are fucked up in their minds. And there are a lot of people that are pretty good in their minds that they don't look externally like they got it together. Obviously, the body is part of the mind. And if you're not working out the body or training the body, disciplining the body, making the body healthy, that part of the mind that is in control of your body is also not disciplined, not healthy, not blah, 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 blah. So you are disciplining your mind by disciplining your body. It's just not your complete mind. Most of your mind is filled with words and symbols and pictures and sounds that are not really related to what you're doing with your body. And so that part should be trained also. So the Science of Spiritual Growth is mostly focused as communication as the technology that you evolve yourself with, that you grow spiritually with, yada, yada, yada. And arguably, like Mo is on my Instagram right now, he's talking about the Silent Flute. Arguably, I would say the Silent Flute is mostly for the Science of Spiritual Growth. Like as far as in terms of like relationship with the topics. Science of Spiritual Growth and Science of Peace. This Science of Peace, it has changed throughout time. I had about 20 or 30 episodes in the beginning with my teacher, Arash, and then I did several solo episodes. I had other guests that I interviewed, different yoga teachers and yoga figures that I knew, whatever. I'll continue to have interviews. One of my favorite was with Joey House from Los Angeles. He's a Wim Hof instructor, certified like level 2 Wim Hof instructor. And he was like an ex-Navy SEAL, and he was a jiu-jitsu guy, so we like to talk fighting. And so that's cool. Science of Peace, now I really aim to focus it kind of like the last episode that I did with Robert Bustami. And then I believe I did an episode last Sunday, and I still mostly focused on physical. Robert is a very mental guy, very smart, and works with physics, and he does a lot with energy in the mind. But even with him, I think I used his presence to help me rebrand the Science of Peace as something more physical oriented, like the physical yoga practice. Like today, I was going to call the episode Inner Violence, or the violence within you. The yoga practice is such a good way to unveil or unveil the inner violence within you. If that's kind of a redundant statement, the inner violence within you, like where else would it be? Or your inner violence would be an efficient way to say that. Your inner violence, there's definitely inner violence, because we were just around some toddlers and babies yesterday. Like, how do parents control their kids? They raise their voice at them. They get a firm voice, which on the other end of it means I am going to physically coerce you if you don't listen to me. The sound of the voice is the sound of the bully from a parent that is frustrated with their young child. So the child is responding to say, please. Well, that one sounded good actually, but like, get over here. Come here. You're saying that to a 2-3-year-old. What you're saying is, do as I say, or I'm physically going to make you do as I say. So the child learns this violence within them, and they take it forward in time. I mean, I can give you a billion examples, and I just keep inventing. There's infinite examples. How you were raised had a lot of coercion on the other side of how you were talked to, and you take that on. You control your behavior through the passive aggression or coercive violence that other people did to you. That's how you learn. You learn how to talk by listening to people talk. You learn how to act by seeing people act. You learn how to love by feeling how you were loved and seeing how people love. You model each other, right? We got Anku, who's a psychologist, famous psychologist, published author. She is an Indian published author in Indian psychology. And you, for lack of a better phrasing, you represent how you were treated until you revisit those behaviors. And even then, it takes horsepower to overcome, to regrow those synapses, to change yourself. But ignorance of what needs to be changed is a surefire way not to change. Like, you'll change subject to the environment will change you. When you start taking control of what's inside in your energy body, in your mental body, in your physical body, then you start hacking your own destiny. You're hacking it. You know, like how a computer hacker hacks things? You hack projective identification, she says. There, I just learned the term. Projective identification. That's what it is. We have a projective identification where we're, you know. And so having some solo spiritual practice is a great way to come to terms with what's in you. You can easily spiral off, but if you just look at your yoga practice as an externalization of your projective identification, an externalization of what was done to you or what has been done to you, you'll see, why do you beat yourself up on those joints? Why do you stretch so hard on this or that? Why are you huffing and puffing this hard? Why are you sweating so much in your yoga practice? And it's a very unique thing to yoga or Tai Chi or very slow movement systems like that. Yoga is the best because of how much pressure it puts on your bones in all different angles. It emphasizes inversions, which does so much for your cardiovascular system. And I prefer yoga. I can give more reasons, but I'm just justifying after that. Those first two reasons I think are pretty universal why yoga is better. But you need a good yoga teacher like anything. If you have a great Tai Chi instructor and you have no good yoga instructors around you, Tai Chi would be what I would do too, you know? So, what was I saying right before that? Let's see. The violence inside of you, it comes out when you have a solo practice that you're with yourself. And it's different from other kinds of workout. That's what I was saying. Because other kinds of workout, exercise, activities. I mean, I, as a guy, what did I do? I was a distance runner. I was a mid-distance runner also. I did other activities. I mean, all the little games and things that kids play. Yeah, I played sports in high schools and whatever. And I became a collegiate wrestler. And I wrestled for 4 years. And then other activities that just started getting me involved with the mind, looking at the mythologies of the East and seeing how it relates to the archetypes in the mind and basically the God within. You start seeing, because this is a very powerful understanding that nobody is really worshiping God, they're worshiping their concept of God. They're not aware of God outside of their awareness of God, and their awareness is inside of their mind. You're not aware of something outside of your mind, you're unaware of that. That's why your mind is so, it could be huge. You could conceptualize the whole universe, and you're still your mind, the universe is in your mind. There's nothing that you're aware of that's out of your mind. So you might say, I can't define God, or God is undefinable, or whatever, but you're still worshiping something, if you worship God, that is your mind. That's a part of your mind that you're worshiping. People, the biggest religion on earth, like my teacher has told me, is the worship of the mind versus the worship. Otherwise, because the truth is one. Nobody is disagreeing that 2 + 2 = 4. The truth is one. So if we're arguing over God or gods, it's because we're all arguing over minds, our opinions. Anyway, so it's talking about other forms of exercise. These things. Okay, so I started going into the mind and I got into yoga, right? And I start realizing that through this calm, silent, solo practice, the images of the mind and the sensations of your memories, you re-stimulate them. You re-stimulate them through how you breathe, or what nerves or muscles that you're touching upon when you're stretching or activating. Somehow those tissues seem to Well, the neurons that go there, or this is how, I explain it. This is the neurons that go there. They are related to the neurons of something that happened in your past, some memory. Some touching of those places can kick up the past activities that you have stored in that. The way you go about stretching your body, the way you pursue your spiritual practice when nobody else is looking, has a lot to do with how you're relating to yourself and your projective identity, if I'm using that term correctly. Because how you're treating yourself, you learned how to treat yourself by how others treated you. You didn't have an individual identity when you were born. You were blended in with the environment. Your senses, you were a sponge. And over time, you became known as you. People would talk to you, and you became known as you. That's why when you talk to yourself, you say you a lot. When you're talking to yourself, you're like, you should blah, blah, blah. Like, who is you? Who are you talking to? You're talking to you because you were called you. Your name was you growing up. And it was also the other name that they were called by. DC, Chris, Julie, Anku, Andrew, whatever your name was. So that's, you became individual when they gave you individual and then named you individual. And, but that was, how did they sound it out? What name did they give you that you became coded by? What if you'd been adopted by a different family and given the name Jason, John, Janice, Jackie, Jane? There's a Jane here. That's interesting. If you were given a different name, how different would you be, really? Would you be any different? What if you had grown up and your name was Alice, Allison? You think you'd be any different right now? Same family, everything is, you'd be different. That's a fucking trip. There, now this show is explicit because I finally cussed. It has to be explicit now. Whoever posts this, my apprentice post this. If your name was different, you'd be different. A persona would be different anyway. You would be the same, but your persona would be different because your persona is mostly given to you. You come into adulthood with a persona that you didn't design, wondering why it has difficulties communicating, relating, sexing, making money. What's your relationship with money is what the relationship that was given to you for money. And then you try to change it later, and it's like, it takes horsepower. Like I say, it takes horsepower. It takes horsepower and the right information, because you could have 1 billion horsepowers in the wrong direction, and then what good is that going to do you? I'd rather have 1 horsepower or a fraction of a horsepower in the right direction than any amount of horsepower in the wrong direction. So don't look at it as like a speed of evolution. Just look at it as the direction. What's that? What do you think about that? So, your product will work into something you didn't design. Mm-hmm. Maybe we did choose it, but then we're following. Yeah, that's fantastical. So she's saying that, there's tell of we choose our parents, we choose where we're born, we choose our conditions we're born into. In the process of being born, we maybe forget that we chose, and then we go through life ignorantly, right? And then we're somehow at some point 18 to 50 or some age in there, we become self-aware that like, oh, here I am. Here's my mind filled with all these ideas. Like you become like, whoa, you have this like moment of awakening. And so that's what's happening. But ultimately when you die, you return to this like knowingness. And that's pretty fantastical. I'm afraid that when you die, your soul is harvested by aliens and just like basically used as a slave for energy. You're used like a battery. But it's pretty fantastical to think that you're choosing to come back. Now, I can't maybe prove or disprove it, but I think it buys into the story of like, you could say, let's say Christians believe that if you ask for forgiveness, then all of your bad doings, you'd be forgiven and you'd go to heaven. Like all these monotheistic religions, Judaism, Islam, even Buddhism in the sense of like nirvana, and definitely Hinduism isn't even monotheistic, but there is some righteous afterlife or some benefit that will come to me in the hereafter in a different plane of existence if I behave now, if somehow I behave now. Like I have to behave to something. Somebody has to convince me of a way to be so that after this, I'll be better. Or there's opposite, but it's a similar vein. And this is what you're saying, is that regardless of what I do in this life, we all return to one. That I will be absolved of all of my wrongdoings when I die because we all return to one. Well, then what's the point of right and wrong? Is there a point to right and wrong? If I'm just when I die, I'm going to go back to perfection, who gives a fuck? If I'm not going to remember or give a shit, or if God doesn't give a shit or whatever, what I did here in life, why have ethics? Why not just pursue sense gratification? You're going to die anyway and go back to, because there is such a thing as cause and effect. There is such a thing as karma. There is such a thing as afterlife. There is such a thing as transcendence. There is such a thing as liberation from this hell cage of your mind and subconscious mind and of your soul, the cage of your soul, basically. The system of thousands of years has designed you genetically with your genetic consciousness, your deep subconscious, your surface subconscious, your just regular consciousness, has designed your mind and beingness to cage your soul, to cage it in cyclic existence. And any story they've told you about the afterlife is part of that cage. So then what are we to do then? I'm telling you, first get self-aware, because we need to have self-awareness of indications of interest towards other people. We need to have self-awareness of when they're being aggressive with each other. We need to have self-awareness. We need to have awareness, because that, if you listen to people talking, those sounds are in your own head. And if you can't identify them as arguing, you can't identify yourself when you're arguing with yourself. So to have clear discernment of what's actually in front of you before you start discerning what's happening outside, after life, before life. Because the fact is, most people are unaware, most men are unaware that everything they're doing is for the pursuit of power and women, and most women are unaware that everything they're doing is for the sake of survival and a man. And if you don't realize that, then how are you going to tell me about we were conscious before we were born, and when we're born, we just forgot? Not you, just whoever told you. Like, what are you doing in this life that makes you so authoritative on what we were doing before life and after life? The idea that we chose to be born is the idea that we return to purity. Because how could you be fully conscious? You're not even conscious, you're giving indications of interest. But you're conscious of before birth? Really? How about you turn your attention to this life then? Instead of telling me the truth about before life and afterlife, show me that awareness, something I can see in front of me. That's why these spiritual people that have terrible relationships, it doesn't mean it's all peachy. A terrible relationship doesn't mean it's bad, like in the sense that it's always, bad vibes or whatever. The terrible relationship is the evolution of your communication and what you're representing to the rest of the world to model, because as a leader to other people, they're going to model their relationship after you, because they were modeling it after their parents, and we're all doing better than our parents. Almost all of us are doing better than our parents. You're supposed to do better than your parents. So if you're not, then find a teacher that will help you do better than your parents. You are doing better than your parents. If you think you're not doing better than your parents, you are at least aware of that fact. I don't know that they are aware of that fact, of that you're supposed to be better than your parents. You're supposed to do better so that life evolves forward. Let's see. Anku, I meant he and world are not one thing. They are separate identity. Okay, so that's when you start to separate projective identity. Yes, so at some point that happens early as you're a toddler, just like a baby. I don't know, somewhere 6 to 18 months, somewhere in there, 2 years, 3 years. In there, you were born, you were blended, and then by 3, 4 years old, you're like, oh, you're separate. And then by like 30 or 40, you're like, oh shit, I'm separate, and I have a whole behavior system and a whole mind that I didn't design. And I'm running on autopilot most of the time, filling my mind with things that I'm not even aware. You're designing your mind, and the world is designing your mind by default. On autopilot, on autoplay, auto repeat. You're living life on repeat. Not with me, I'm not. I'm talking about something different every week, and studying every day, practicing. So getting back to this violence within you, when you stretch and breathe and do your practice alone and you're with yourself, the goal, and a teacher should help do this for you, the teacher should help put your attention on, I'm looking at myself do this practice. I'm doing this practice to discipline my body because there's a part of my mind that is related to my body. It's my mind, my body's mind. So I'm disciplined, and that becomes access into the mind because it's the same mind that holds all the words, all the memories, all the sensations, dreams, imagination. It's the same mind. So I'm using the body to access my mind because I know I at least have a mind related to this body movement and coordination and breathing and everything. Okay, so you access the mind. Start to see in this preliminary period, in many ways I could say, even though this episode today has been really deep, right? But in many ways I thought of Science of Peace of being more beginner because it just starts with the physical practices. It's so apparent. It's like I was just saying about these spiritual teachers that talk about before and after death, but show me your success here in life. It should be apparent that you have clarity and discernment before you give me the clarity and discernment before and after life. It becomes apparent your inner violence when you stretch and breathe yourself. It sounds weird to say it that way, but when you do your yoga practice, it becomes apparent how you think about yourself. Any teacher that's been, and listen, I've been practicing like 9 years. How masterful am I? I mean, maybe have an extraordinary capacity for it, a disposition for it. Maybe I was already so intelligent, this or that. Like, but in 9 years, I mean, Robert Bastani's been teaching yoga for like 45, 50 years. Like, there's some wisdom that comes with time that can't be substituted. But I'm just saying, from me, my experience of practicing yoga, teaching yoga, I can see it on people's face. I can hear it in their breathing. I can see it in their posture and when they're hurting themselves or when they're thinking about something when they're practicing. I can see their mind literally moving as a separate thing. There's a part of their mind that's not related to their body, and there's activity going on there. But the body is reacting to it. And how you stretch, how you breathe, how you do your yoga, how you do your mantras, how you do your reading, your self-study, how you do any of it. Yeah, how you do everything is how you do anything. But the uniqueness about a spiritual practice, this yoga practice, is that it's away from the opinions of other people. You need to train yourself to be honest with yourself. When you're honest with yourself, you can handle the opinions of other people because you don't give a fuck about their opinions. It's when you're not honest with yourself that you care so much about the opinions of other people. And to get honest with yourself, you don't want the first time you're being honest with yourself to be around other people because you don't know what's going to come out. So to be honest with yourself, you kind of want to be with yourself. The yoga and you have a teacher, so it's kind of like the therapist. I don't like that word. If you didn't know, here's some word magic. Therapist, the rapist. That's how you spell therapist. It's pretty shitty, right? They should have thought of a different word for that. We should look up what word came first, rapist or therapist, right? It's a shame. It's English though, you know? So what are we going to do? DC. I remember how my experience was as a kid, molded with the environment. Yeah. Yeah, I had some flashback, heavy flashback yesterday. Well, where was that? What was the last thing you said? What before that? Yeah, before the what was the note that you had before it? Stretch and breathe makes you part of your energy, brings out the inner. Yeah, it does. It brings out the nirvana. The stretching and breathing, we should probably wind this down. I had no concept of world as a child. I just wanted to be helpful. Yeah, and your parents used you for that. I saw the kid yesterday, one of the kids, the different kid, not the birthday kid, or their family, the other family that came. And the kid had some toys on the chair. And mom was saying, no, on the chair. He was looking around saying, no, on the chair. I jumped in on it. I was like, the chair. And he's like, found it. And when he lit up when he found it. And I was like, yeah. And I started lighting up with him. And I was like, yeah, we found it. And then he got it and he returned it to his mom and just handed it to her. And then went back and wanted some cake. It was a birthday party. And she was like, no. And then just started doing no. And I'm like, well, I'm just looking at it and I'm like, what is this kid learning punishment reward system? Like, what is he learning? Why did he get the toys? What does he feel about cake? The other kid, the 1-year-old infant, is eating processed sugar for the birthday cake. that is going into his body. His body is being made from bleached sugar. It's basically stone. Arguably one of the most addictive substances on earth, giving it to the 1-year-old. But yeah, I mean, it's the culture, you know. What do you blame the parents or something? It's just looking at it that you're conditioned. Is it any wonder why people get diabetes? Is it any wonder why they get fat when they're older? Is it any wonder why they have trouble dieting? Is it any wonder why they have trouble dropping sugar, dropping soda, dropping beer, dropping carbs? When you feed them, I mean, where in human history throughout antiquity did you feed a baby processed sugar? No, that's like since 1900, whenever the fuck we started bleaching sugar. Right? There's major advancements in modern living, but where is that okay? Like I have to wear a face mask outside, but it's okay to feed my 1-year-old processed sugar. Like it doesn't even make sense. Okay. So the violence thing, so I encourage you all, I want you all to have some kind of yoga practice, something that you connect with yourself, connect with your sensations. Oh, that's what I was saying. When you get honest with yourself. So you don't want to, internet connection is unstable. You guys still hear me? You guys still hear me? It says internet connection unstable. Okay. So you want to get honest with yourself. You don't want the first time that you're honest with yourself to be around other people. You don't know what's going to come out. It's very difficult. I was hella honest with you yesterday, and it was hella rewarding. But how difficult that was. So difficult. How many times do you think that's happened to me in private doing my yoga practice? Those are breakthroughs. That's when you start to love your yoga practice like, shit, this is my savior. Like, when would I have processed this? But now, ninth limb, my yoga is coming out. Nice. Running does it for you. So we process so much. So you can be honest with yourself. And then you have a teacher who is like a coach. I like this word coach, or a mentor, because ment is like mind. So it's like somehow, I think of like a matador or something, but like of the mind, like a mentor. You know, helping to steer your mind. You can get feedback. I remember when I first started having some psychic experiences, and I remembered something that happened before I was born to a family member of mine. And it was very difficult to face, but I confronted that family member and confirmed that I saw what happened to something before I was born. But who do you talk to about that? Thank God I had a yoga teacher that was privy to this stuff, that was experienced with this stuff. People come to me and they say, I see ghosts, what can I do? Thank goodness that I don't look at them as crazy, because I have experienced things. Food is what we all need to learn more about. I am still rebuilding my body from the first 27 years. I know what you mean. Man, that's when I started waking up too. Like around 25, I think, is when I moved to Florida. It was September 28, 29 or so. And I just decided, of 2011, I decided I don't want to buy any milk or meat. I didn't want to buy any meat. So I filled my kitchen with some food, cheese and dairy. I decided, and 3 weeks later, I didn't want any dairy anymore. I didn't like it. I didn't like cows, how they were treated, blah, blah, blah. Now I eat eggs, but I started eating eggs about a year ago. So I went 7.5 years or whatever vegan. The violence within me was coming out in my yoga practice. I was beating myself up with my yoga, and it was easy to see because I was doing a consistent practice. So have you ever heard of repetitive stress syndrome or repetitive stress injuries? You know, if you repeat the same movements, it becomes obvious if you're doing something wrong, or you're doing something aggressively violent towards your body. I'm all for disciplining the body, for not tolerating or sympathizing with the body. But this is an organic machine that you can damage, and you're living forward with it. And it's an expression, it is the vehicle of your consciousness, and it is the tool that you communicate with the world with through your fashion and posture and your skin and teeth and so how you treat your body is how you treat yourself. And you do the best with what you got, and change yourself as you become aware, and just use it as a playground. It's a playground. People probably do something weird as I say that, but okay, but I'll go ahead and end it. Unless we have any burning questions, you can go ahead and say or type, and I'll get to that. Otherwise, this is where we'll end it. We got anything on Facebook here? Anything live? Nothing live. But we got pretty good attendance for Sunday morning, especially at the time. 3 on Facebook, 3 on Instagram, and 3 on Zoom. And 1 live. That's 10 people. Nice. If you like this show, guys, comment, leave a comment, leave a review, subscribe to the podcast on your podcast app, iTunes or on YouTube. On YouTube, there's not a podcast channel for this yet. Maybe there will be one day. Right now, I'm just posting them on my YouTube, my personal YouTube. Okay, I don't see anything. Look for what's coming out. Lots of ebooks are about to come out. It's going to be a storm that hits you. It's going to be a great really powerful information. I'm very excited to put that out. It's going to be the Wolf Ultimate Love Spell book. And I'll see you next Sunday. See the other podcast Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday at 5 p.m. or Sunday here at 9 a.m. Pacific. Here is Science of Peace. Until next time. Namaste. Nice. Good job.